How we doing, everybody? All right, all right. Looks like we're getting set up here. Well, maybe not. Maybe not the Northeast. Well, parts of the Northeast. Most of the Northeast. Maybe not New England and I-95 Northeast system, but this is definitely a fun system to follow. Even though it's all rain, even though it's all rain for many of us, it is still been a pretty fun system to follow. Um, Especially with the lake effect that's going to take place too. That's what's really excited me with this system is the potential for the lake effect. I think that that is going to be one hell of an event. One hell of an event. So we'll dive into that after we just break down just in general what's been happening with the system. Let's get into it. So we've had a couple changes. If you notice in models, a little bit more progressive of a look we've had over the past day. I would say we've been trending towards is the east. When our ridge backed off here, this our trend of a more potent farther east western ridge, ironically, backed off. So allowing our system to breathe more. But instead of just pushing further south and east, now what we're doing is, um, I'm pretty sure we've had a little bit more confluence with this system, or at least the angle of the confluence. And what's happened is we've allowed we pushed this to the point where we're pushing this east. Oh no, nope, nope, nope. We're pushing this east and then just delaying amplification further north. So this further takes away from snow totals in these areas and enhances them across Canada. So Canada gets a massive snowstorm, and they're able to cash in on I don't know about historic. I don't know the Canadian snowfall totals, but they're going to cash in on a lot of snowfall. A lot of snowfall. Oh, nope. Because if you follow the upper level low, it's kind of sneaky. Because what happens is so much moisture gets pulled in, so much convection gets pulled in that it almost has trouble consolidating because of how much it's pulled in at this point. So it wraps it all the way around, and it's not able to consolidate the upper level low as perfect as it could. But that's a really good consolidation, the upper level low, where stacking our 850 or 700 low on top of our 500 and near our surface too. And at that point, then you really start to see the consolidation take place. It just gets delayed. So, and that's why Canada is going to get feet of snow in blizzard conditions. Um, Blizzard conditions. So yeah, I mean, there's still going to be there's still been snow tonight across like Pennsylvania, or today I should say too, New York, into the Berkshires, Vermont. Like this has kind of been not perfect, um, but roughly this has been our wintry mix kind of line, and then there's some exceptions depending on elevation, etc. So. not perfect, but there has been snow today across a lot of the Northeast, and this is just the beginning of what's going to be a windy couple days across too in the Northeast as well. Which let's talk about that first before we talk about the lake effect, because I have so many thought. I have well, I don't know about so many, but I have a lot I want to talk about with the lake effect because it's very very exciting. Um, in terms from a meteorological perspective of what's going to happen. It's going to be, I mean, this is about as prime of a setup you can get for a lake effect. And when I saw this system, one of my first thoughts was after, regardless of where this sets up, it's going to be a massive lake effect event. I mean, a massive lake effect event. It's in the low is in such a where the low stalls and occludes, it's in such a perfect spot for to get such a prolonged lake effect event across western New York, and it will those bands will extend inland too, which will go into depth. But I want to talk about the wind threat, which is going to be very much present, and we'll dive into. Let's take a look here at our low level jet. So one of the things that is going to help contribute, and is the one of the biggest factors is you got to remember here we're in the we got advance 12Z today. There we go. No, what happened? Yeah, whatever. Alrighty. Give me my low level jet back. There we go. Got it. Oh, and it will be a very cold Christmas too, which I remind you all of. So this is this is so it's going to be two parts. So it's going to be a two-part wind event for the Northeast. What we're going to do is, obviously we can see this is we can see the center of our system clearly, and the Northeast is going to be centered in the Southeast quadrant. So we're going to be pulling on the southerly and southeast winds. So we're going to pull up a lot of moisture. So we're going to get a lot of rainfall too. Probably, 1 to 3 inches plus in rainfall, maybe 2 to 4 for some places. A lot of rainfall for some locations, and then that's part of the reason. I know I know what's gonna like. It is gonna be a dry wind. Yes, it's gonna be a cold wind. It's gonna be a very dry wind. But I'm somewhere in the middle currently of the people that just, it's a dry wind, and it's a flash freeze, massive problems incoming. I'm kind of in the middle, I think there could be a significant flash freeze threat. That's hard word to say, or a hard phrase to say. For the places that switch over from rain to snow, that could definitely be a flash freeze threat, because you're going to go below freezing, at some point when you snow, and then what's going to happen is, you're freezing all the moisture, but you're still snowing, so you're keeping roadways and land wet still, while the freezing is happening. And the atmosphere is saturated, more importantly, so you're gonna be creating really cold temperatures, but also a somewhat still saturated atmosphere. So this is why people that switch back to snow are going to have, I think these areas, I think, somewhere somewhere in here, I think is the best chance for snow with this event. Like back end snow for maybe like some places may get a little bit more, but a coating, half inch, coating to an inch, so there's some exceptions. Some people might get more, some people might get 1 to 3, or maybe 2 to 5, but that's excluding the lake effect event too. but for the most part, it's not going to be any major accumulation. But what it is it's going to be a saturated atmosphere. So that is going a saturated atmosphere with cold temperatures incoming or present. It's going to help freeze the ground and not dry up the moisture so quickly. So that's kind of that's my concern with the flash freeze threat. But also locate areas of your street or yard or areas of your town that are the most susceptible to flooding. Those are the areas you're probably just want to be careful of, because where water piles up, it's not going to be able to go away as easily, um, and that will be the biggest concern for the freeze threat. When you have water that's piled up, you're going to be able to freeze right away, like just like a lake, right? The lake, the water doesn't go anywhere, so freezes up. So kind of imagine it like that. Whereas if areas that don't usually flood too badly and you never have any flooding issues, the flat, areas, not the hilly, probably not a major flash freeze threat. Maybe some patchy black ice spots or just patchy ice spots, but probably no massive flash freeze threat for those areas. Hopefully that clear up the flash freeze hysteria that people are talking about. Now again, the people that snow on the backside, that is a greater concern for the flash freeze threat. But people that switch from rate to rain and then the snow dries up on them, less of a chance for a significant flash freeze threat. Now, connecting that to the first part of our flash freeze threat, which I've maybe said like 10 times now in the last like 2 minutes, but the point is we're on the eastern side and we're on the southeast quadrant. So the upper level low is going to pass us. The freezing line is going to go well north of us in the upper levels as well, but especially the surface where temps are going to rise, 45, 50, 55, maybe even 60 degrees for some folks here tonight into tomorrow morning. And then we're going to pull them, right? We're flooding in all this warm air because what happens is in the system, right, we flood in all of this warm air, and that meets our cold air that is in place, right? Our cold air that is in place. Warm air meets cold air, and where that meets, that's your area for where your snow breaks out, right? That is how big cyclones, big cyclonic winter storms work. I mean, we don't see anything other than cyclonic storms here in the U.S., but we don't. But my point is, right? When you create a cyclone, you create different areas of spin, and that spin pulls up dynamics, moisture from different areas, right? So when we have cold air in place, if anybody knows science, when you get cold air to meet warm air, you're gonna create something special. Some sort of, whether it's a boom, an explosion, whatever. Whenever you create warm air and to meet cold air, you're gonna get something to happen. More north. Listen, I promise. I'm covering all the simple stuff first. Um, or when I say simple stuff, I'm covering all the stuff that I won't digress on first, and then I'm really close to diving into that lake effect event right now. I'm so close to. But first, I need to cover this stuff first, but also I can't tell you exactly where the band is going to set up. We can narrow it down, pretty good idea. Um, and we'll get into that. We'll get into that. I promise. I know you wanted your question answered this second, but if you just stay with me, we're diving into it. I promise. I promise. Um, Point is, we have dynamic systems. So we're pulling in. I mean, basically cribbing moisture into the system, and creating that to meet the cold air. No worries. You're good, my man. You're good. You're just curious. I like that. Curiosity is good. So we're getting warm air to meet the cold air, right? But in order to do that, that means someone has to go in the warm air if we're getting a system this far inland. Um, and that means, sorry, there's your warm sector. There's your warm sector for this system, and that means we're pulling in all the warm air. For the people that hate snow, you're gonna love it. You're gonna love this event, but not too many of my followers hate snow. There's a reason. The reason I have as many followers as I do is because they like the snow, or at least most of them do. Um, if they didn't, I don't know why they would follow me, because that's what I talk about like 65% of the time or something like that. I don't know, but notice now our low level jet, we're going to enhance that. So right as our cyclone strengthens, we're strengthening our low level jet as well. We're pulling in more warm air into the system, and I mean this is just a potent low level jet here. I mean you can clearly see 60 to 60. I mean terrain in Vermont as well. I mean 60, 70 to 80 knot low level jet. That's just going to keep strengthening too. You can see how strong this gets. I mean, potentially a 75, 90 knot low level jet, and just offshore too, especially along the coastline of eastern New England. I mean, look at those numbers, right? And remember, we're looking at our low level jet here. We're not looking at surface winds. We're not looking at winds at the surface. And we'll pull it down. We're at 850. Let's pull it down to 925. So there's going to be less mixing of those winds. Right? Because all the way up in the higher levels of the atmosphere, right, you can get really strong, winds, 1 to 150 plus, knot winds. You can get sometimes in the upper levels of the atmosphere. Little bit different as you work closer to the surface, but clearly you can see our low level jet is enhancing. We'll pull it in closer. But I just the overview of the U.S. is a good way to help lead you guys into what I'm looking at. But I mean, look at our 925s, really strong. I mean, 60, 70 plus knots. And it's pretty widespread across a lot of the models. I mean, even for me inland here, I mean, I'm looking at like a 50 knot 925s, and the lower you get in the atmosphere, the easier it is for these to mix down. We look at another model. Always smart to look at another model too. What in the okay, whatever. Looks like NAM is a little bit slower with these, and they take. Or also we have it's 3-hour intervals on the Euro as well too, but. And why am I looking at 500? NAM, you couldn't have been more unhelpful there. Seriously? Still, you can see the NAM evolve with our 925s here. Tomorrow afternoon is going to be very windy as well. So notice this is our front moving through here. All right, our front is moving through. So out ahead of the front, we're going to have potentially some convective squalls as well. Or it's a squall. It's going to be like a squall line, kind of. Not kind of. It is. It's going to be a front, and it'll probably be a bit of a squall line, potentially skinny squall line. But farther south and east here in southeastern New England, could see some thunderstorms even, and that could help enhance it. And that'll be able to help bring more of those stronger winds higher up into the atmosphere down to the surface. So you'll be able maybe to tap into some of those 850s a little bit, especially much of those 925s when you get into thunderstorms. Those are just, when you start adding CAPE into the equation, you're able to enhance your wind threat, and you can pull down, you can get more mixing to occur in the atmosphere. Here's what I mean by that, if that was confusing. right? Imagine 500, 700, 850, 925 surface, right? So imagine, right? This is our column in the atmosphere, right? So we have, if we have like 80 knot winds here at 850, we have, let's say, like 73 at 925. You're not going to be able, you're going to be able to pull, and we're still yet to see what we're at the surface. But the more we mix from these numbers, right, the lower we get in the atmosphere, the less we're going to be able to take, right? But the higher our clip, right, the higher our, right, when we talk about cloud tops, the higher our storm is, right, the higher those cloud tops are, right? That means we're going higher up in the atmosphere, right? And that means we're pulling down more of the dynamics from the higher levels in the atmosphere. So we're going to pull down. We're going to pull down to the surface. And so maybe not necessarily always, all of this, right? We're not going to pull down 80 knot winds necessarily in this storm. Probably not going to get any 90-mile-an-hour wind gusts. But the point is, pull down with when you start, that you start talking about thunderstorms, right? Higher cloud tops, you're going to be able to pull down. It's not the perfect explanation. That's the best way I can help you understand it in a simplified way without making me look like a complete idiot. I'm kind of an idiot, but not a complete idiot. So let's say theoretically, maybe you get 60 knot winds at the surface when you're getting really heavy radar echoes and maybe a thunderstorm. And that'll be the threat for 70-mile-per-hour winds will probably only contain to here. That will probably be the only threat for 70-mile-per-hour winds besides elevation. Along the elevation in Vermont could definitely have a chance to see some 70-plus mile-per-hour wind gusts. All right. The NAM 3K is just a little blotchy for me, so we're going to get to the NAM 12K. Yeah, the coast is going to have the best shot here. Best shot for the highest winds here on the coast. Let's take a sounding. We'll go to southeastern Mass. A little bit of an inversion. Right, with a little bit of an inversion we have present, but not a massive one, not a massive inversion. So we're definitely going to be able to pull down, right? We're 50 over 50, well saturated, even a little bit. You only see that typically with hail soundings. Interesting. A little bit of an inversion there. Interesting. Sorry, what was it? Winds already whipping on Cape Ann on the coast. Oh, what are you up to? Maybe 40, 45 miles per hour? I hate this song. You kidding me? If you skip, they add you. That's incredible. It's not even his music. Let's check on Maine. Small inversion. Yeah, a little bit of inversion at the surface, so we're not going to pull down. Not going to pull. This is a little contaminated too, so maybe not going to get the best. Um, a little bit of, so maybe not. Maybe a little bit of a cap on some of these. Some of these higher wind totals. Probably not going to be able to get into any 75, 80 mile per hour gusts for most tonight. Maybe a couple isolated locations across the Cape and south in coastal southeastern New England. But that's pretty much, looks like that's pretty much going to be the area most favored for to be able to see that the highest wind gusts. Stop going to 500. If I'm at 925, why would I want to switch to 500? Hmm. Yeah, definitely an inversion here. You can't tell, but I pulled the computer screen close to my face to look at it. Yep, not gonna be pulling down those, but still doesn't mean under those heavy rates you can't pull down some really strong wind gusts. Some really strong wind gusts. All right. Well, coastal's gonna get start. We'll start earlier and end later than inland places do with the winds. So not not surprising. You saw it move. I hope not. I don't need nobody spying on me. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there we go. Oh, you got that wind whiplash on your face. Not any ridiculous. I mean, oh, what? Um, I don't know what. Where I took. It seems like round two is going to be a little bit more potent than round one as well. That is very contaminated. So I notice the dendritic growth zone shouldn't be turning on, or the omega on our soundings should not be turning on this much. If it was a little bit, I'd be like, okay, whatever. Should not be turning on this much in the low levels of the atmosphere, warmer 51 degrees. Um, I mean, well, yes. I mean, it should be, but it is to the point where it's not useful. That means that's can tend to mean, a lot of times with tornado outbreaks, we have a lot of forcing. It tend to skew soundings. Um, Hopefully, okay. Here's less. P watt. Yeah. Hmm. I don't know. I feel like we should be pulling in higher P watt values than 1 inch. I thought we'd be pulling in at least 1.3. How are we doing moisture wise? Do I not get this here? Do we need to switch to? There we go. guess not crazy. Relative humidity values. Yeah. I thought this would be higher. I think I'm going to go on a limb and say these are underdone a little bit. Just from such a dynamic system we have. I mean, it's going to be like a 970 millibar system. This is turning into. I mean, this is going to be such a dynamic system. Freezing spray advisory. Yeah, it's like it's hard to describe. Like I understand why they would. You're close to the coast. You're gonna go below freezing. There could be some drizzle left over. It's hard to exactly explain a freezing spray advisory without me looking at the exact definition. But hey, let's look at the exact definition. It's okay. Yep. It's for it's less for inland. It's why they put if you ever live on the coast, you notice they'll have a lot of advisories many times, and this is more for boats, people traveling on the water. Which I should have known beforehand, but it is what it is. We have any more questions on the wind? Any more questions on the wind? I've been digressing a little bit more than I thought I was, but I like to learn the setups the best I can, and sometimes that happens on stream if I'm not looking a ton at it beforehand. I have been looking at the lake effect and ocean effect, though, so I am a little bit more rehearsed there. Any last questions on the wind? I am going to. Most people left because they thought I was going to talk about the lake effect. So yeah, I don't like the impression thing. I don't like the impression thing. Not a fan of it. Any suggestions for flash freeze tomorrow for North Shore? I talked about this earlier, so if you want to hear the whole spiel, you can replay it after I'm done, or you'll probably go to bed after. But you can replay that. But I will say, I think flash freeze will be more of a concern for people who see snow on the backside, compared to people that go from rain to where the snow dries up. The drier wind is going to make it easier to pull up that moisture. But those are my thoughts. So anywhere where water usually piles up, I think that's your greatest concern. That's your greatest concern for the flash freeze threat. Anywhere it usually floods or where water piles up, I'd be a little cautious. I'd be cautious for some black ice on roads, but no life altering flash freeze probably. But that's the short summary. All right, let's talk about the lake effect. Let's do it. So I want Eastern region. This is too far zoomed in. So this is our system. Right, we talked about it. This is pushing through. We can follow the upper level low. It's going to actually track like right over Buffalo and Western New York. So the upper level low is going to track over. But then what happens is one big spinny thing is the best scientific way to describe it. So what's going to happen is right now we're pulling Arctic air, pulling vorticity from this system. We're pulling across. So we're going to have westerly winds that are going to be moving over the lake. So we're going to get winds to set up, right? We set it out of the west, and we're going to pull all this vorticity is going to get pulled over the lakes for just days and days and days. I mean, it's going to be the 26th before this thing wraps up. Wrap your head around that. It's the 23rd currently. So, right, they're going to switch to snow today. And then, I mean, actually, there's still more to come through. I mean, that's a whole nother. We'll talk about that one. I'm not so confident in this one at the moment. Just there's so much wiggle. There's too much. There's not enough wiggle room at the moment that makes me think we got an imminent storm threat with that one. I mean, check the low level ones in a second, but just a lot of energy, vorticity that has to move through over the Great Lakes over the next couple days. And with a strong westerly wind, take a look at our 850s. I mean, look at our low level jet here for days, right? So we're going to be able to start what's an ish, right? Not a ton. Well, actually, how much low level for how much we get 850s? There's still a good amount of low level vorticity. So yeah, that will be key as well. And that's going to stay around too for a minute. Maybe the 27th until this wraps up, to be honest. Still going to be a lot of low level vorticity left around. And a part of that too is, right, we have like mainly around 40 degrees, I guess I should say lake surface temperatures, not sea surface temperatures, around 38 to anywhere from 38 to 44 degrees I found from Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. I did not do the Michigan lakes. I did not look at those at all. But no, it's right. And the more you tend to see bands tend to move more inland, the stronger the wind, because they can pull those bands farther inland the stronger the wind is, and we have a little bit stronger of a wind. So I think these bands are going to be able to make it a little bit farther inland, not necessarily into New England, but it's going to be pulled farther up into upstate New York, right? And we're going to have this, right, multiple bands, pulled up into New York. Still, the heaviest will be closer to the coast, obviously. But last time it was almost right on the coast. I think there's going to be an opportunity for jackpots just off the coast, potentially by a little bit more than last time, with a little bit stronger of a wind. Right, but notice our low level winds, right, for days off the lakes. Days. Not until the 26th, 27th does this wrap up. Probably, midday, late 26th. Take a look at the NAM too. Even stronger. For days. And tomorrow is going to be the biggest day. Tomorrow and Christmas Day. So Christmas Eve and Christmas Day are going to be the two biggest days. And then also we're going to talk about the last part, ocean effect snow for southeastern Mass, for southeastern New England. Yes, possibly southeastern Mass as well. But the ocean effect snow is exciting because that's closer to me. And also for some people that typically don't see a lot of snow, like Nantucket and Cape Cod, they don't see as much snow as the rest of New England does. How often does the HRR model come out? It comes out every hour, but the extended HRR comes out every 6 hours. I will say, though, you should only use the HRR particularly for like 6 hour increments max is when it's best to get the best use out of it. And even then, it's more of a model you're looking at in the short range for 1 to 4, 1 to 3, 3-4 hour range is like the best. Is where it's at its best. It can pick up on bands where they're going to set up. That's where it's best used. It's not best used to figure out how much snowfall you're going to see in the upcoming system, even though it does have some ideas. I mean, think about it. The HRR only goes out 48 hours max every 6 hours, and it goes like 18 hours every hour. So if the GFS goes out 384 for a reason, right? And the GF in models suck at 384 out because it's farther out, farther probability, unable to figure out how it happened, right? Think about it like this: during sports, if you're watching, let's say the NBA, figuring out who's going to win the championship early in the season is a lot harder than it is when you're in the conference semifinals, when there's like 8 or 4 teams left, right? When there's like 8 teams left, it's a lot easier to figure out, or let's say 4. When there's 4 teams left compared to when you were in the early beginning stages of the season, obviously, there's some teams who aren't going to make it. But my point is, right, there's a lot more uncertainty. So the closer you get in that range, the better you're going to be able to figure out, right? It's just probability. That's my point here. With models, they can only, you can try to guess so far out, but not necessarily going to be maybe the greatest guess. So when you look, the NAM goes out 84 hours. There's a reason that people talk about the long-range NAM should be used with caution. Right? There's a reason. So you got to know how long these models go out. How cold is it in St. Stephen, Alabama? I'm sorry, my man. I got no idea where St. Stephen, Alabama is. Yeah, I don't know where. I could give you an idea of how cold it may get if you give me a part of Alabama, like northern Alabama or central or southern Alabama. If you give me northwestern, I don't know what part, or if you have any terrain, like if you're at the bottom of the Appalachians or something in Alabama. Also tomorrow's the 23rd, so I should say the 23rd and 24th are going to be the 2 biggest lake effect days, probably. Because look how strong our winds are, and also relative to how much, we'll take a look at mid-level vorticity. How much, look, that is, that's going to get the job done for lake effect. Oh, appreciate it. Thank you, Andrew. Just days. You're still going to have a good amount of vorticity left on the 25th as well. So, a 3 to 4 day event here potentially of impactful lake effect. Tomorrow night is going to be some sick stuff you're going to see, depending on how you like snow. It could be sick in both ways. Really impactful snow event. And the thing about too, right? Really cold. Let's take a look at some soundings. With a lot of these lake effects, snows tend to come a lot of times when the Arctic air is moving through, right? Like the backside of a storm system is moving through, and you're getting vorticity to come through. So this is also combined with, right? They're getting back end snow or almost overhead snow from the upper level low. They're going to be on the southern side of the upper level low, and as it's changing over, they're going to get into snow, and probably some pretty good snow. It'll be hard to figure out what is lake effect and what's not eventually, but some pretty good decent snow. Not great, but because we notice, take a look at our dendritic growth zone, which is evidently all the way down to the surface. Typically you look from -20 to -10. Never gets to -10. Never gets to -10. So cold, very cold. Um, do what you can. So it's, but really not well saturated here at the surface. So I'm not a fan of this sounding, honestly, to be completely honest, because we're lacking some low level saturation, and that's preventing our dendritic growth zone and the low levels of the atmosphere from being too impactful. And with such a low level dendritic growth zone, uh, that's very good too for snowfall production when you have your dendritic growth zone so low in the atmosphere. So that means you're really cold throughout the atmosphere, and the colder you are in your dendritic growth zone, the fluffier your snow is going to be, and the more it's going to be able to accumulate. Now, with that being said, we have good, in -20, right when we get to around 600 millibars in the atmosphere here, down to 675s. Pretty good look in terms of omega. We have the amount of forcing, the amount of ascent we have in the atmosphere, um, pretty good. But down to the surface, right, lacking saturation, not a ton of lift in the low levels of the atmosphere, which is not good. And this is why I don't like back end snow setups a lot. But when we look closer, right, closer to the upper level low, take a look at the a little bit better. This is a really good sounding, right? Notice at this point now we're 30 degrees. We're not 10 degrees, but locate. We're still -20 at around the same spot. Still -20 from 600. We are -10. Here's our dendritic growth zone right here. They lay it out for you so you don't have to do this, but I like doing it myself manually because it's good. It's a good skill to be able to have when you're doing snow soundings. And notice we're -1, -1.5 omega. We have really good lift. We have good forcing in the atmosphere. So this is a good moderate to heavy snow sounding here. And notice I went at 1 or 2 hours earlier. I'm a little bit closer to the upper level low, better dynamics, more saturated. So you're going to be able to pull a little bit better of a sounding here. Much better low level saturation here, well saturated in the atmosphere all the way into the upper levels. So this is a good sounding for potentially heavy snow. Oh no, not what I wanted to do. I mean, they are going to get some ridiculous snowfall. I mean, geez. I mean, they're going to get some special. I mean, on what I would do to get into this, man. Man, them luck. I won't say, but they're Canadians are in for a treat. They're in for a treat, man. Take a look. This is an even lake effect. Another good sounding, pretty well saturated across the mid levels in our atmosphere, and all the way down until lower into the mid levels, and then very well saturated down to the surface. A little wet at 35 degrees, but at -20, -10 is from 600 to 700 millibars in the atmosphere. You're actually probably going to get some pretty good snowfall accumulation, even though we're down to 35 at the surface. Why does it keep doing this? Now the lake effect. Now you see over. Now the lake effect takes over. I mean, these are some skinny bands, man. Skinny. That is not too good. I mean, 2 degrees, and lake effect snow. Here is another factor. Our dendritic growth zone, it's so cold. Our dendritic growth zone is at, I mean, that is such a low. I mean, I guess we're technically snowing. I mean, that is ridiculous. That's why it's so hard to snow when you're so cold, because typically the atmosphere is so dry. It'll be a little bit warmer. Here we go. I mean, well saturated in the lower levels, really strong forcing in the low levels of the atmosphere here. Uh, take a look at our dendritic growth zone. I mean, it's basically down to the surface. It's basically down to the surface. So from minus 20 to the surface, you never get to minus 10. Um, and I'm bringing this up because that's how you identify the dendritic growth zone. From minus 20 to minus 10 is typically where the dendritic growth zone is located in the atmosphere. In other words, where your snowflake production takes place. You know, where your biggest, you know, your spot in the atmosphere where you're able to best produce snowflakes. Um, that's where you look for in the atmosphere from minus 10 to minus 20 degrees Celsius. Never get, it was so cold we never get there, so we don't have to worry about being saturated. It would be nice, but it also, it's too, you would never find an upper level atmosphere. It would be rare to find an upper level and mid down even to the almost to the mid levels saturated all the way down. When I say saturated, if that's going over anybody's head, which if it is, no worries. I didn't explain it. You know, the green and the red line are close. Green is our dew point. Our red is our surface temperatures. And when those are closer together, that means the more saturated we are in our atmosphere. So here down to the surface, we're not perfectly saturated, but we're pretty well saturated from 750 all the way down to the surface here. So, and also this is a vertical column that we're taking over our atmosphere, and we're helping to highlight. Let's just imagine you pick one spot, one location. You're identifying, you know, all the atmospheric conditions. In this case, really heavy snow sounding right here. This is, remember, right? This the lake effect. So you get, I mean, take a look how long, just days, and look, some of these bands even able to push inland, well inland too, potentially. This is a little choppy. Right, so as it moves through, right, we're pulling in, right, like I talked about, vorticity here. I shouldn't have used blue on blue. That's my mistake. Pulling in vorticity here, right? We're pulling in energy, in other words, to simplify it. Pulling in vorticity here, pulling in energy, and we're getting it, right? We have a strong low-level wind off the lake. So you get these two factors where it will help create, right, enough lift in the atmosphere to create these bands that set up. And that's how we get the heavy snow event, the heavy lake effect event, I should say. And it can't take soundings on the NAM 12K for some reason. Levi, please. I hope he's not listening, but I would love to have some soundings on the NAM 12K on pivotal and not just or on tropical and not just pivotal. But and then Lake Ontario too, right? Looked at some of those Lake Erie soundings, but look at Lake Ontario. Take a look. Solid Omega probably at least -1, maybe -2. I can't tell exactly. I forget how to. There's no label here. Thundersnow will could happen as well. Thundersnow could very well happen. I will say the lakes are a little bit colder, but thundersnow will definitely be possible tomorrow as well, and the day after that as well. Tomorrow night, tomorrow night, and or tomorrow p.m. into Christmas Eve morning will be the best shot for thunder snow across um, Western New York. And I hate taking soundings. Or snow. I don't. I shouldn't say that. I just don't like taking. I like taking snow soundings on tidbits. I like taking snow soundings on tidbits better. And clearly, you can see right. This is 2.5 days away, so I don't know exactly if it's perfectly handling how it's coming through, but well saturated all the way down from about 650 in the atmosphere all the way down, well saturated. Um, Get our dendritic growth zone is cooking at 800 all the way down to the surface. So I mean, just it's gonna be. I mean, this is potentially with our dendritic growth zone. You got to remember, we're so cold. We're so cold. I mean, we're in the teens. We're going to be in the snowing for this whole event. It's going to be in the 20s, right? The thing that what separated the last event is, listen, we had an Arctic air mass in place, and so there'll probably be a little bit less thunder snow. I think because we're not gonna be quite as quite. I remember those 50-degree lake temperatures. Those were rather warm, and we're also colder. It's a colder air Arctic air mass, so it's going to be harder to create more instability in the atmosphere being so cold. So not sure how much thunderstorm we will get. I would lean less than last time. Um, but the thing, even though there may be less thunder snow, I think the totals are going to be higher. It's going to be a fluffier snow. It's going to be able to. Last event wasn't not a fluffy snow, meaning it was a fluffy snow, but this is going to be even fluffier. Think about it. If you're snowing like anywhere from like 8 degrees to like 20 degrees, if you're snowing 10 to 20 degrees, it's a really fluffy. Last event, I think it was in the upper 20s, low 30s for most of the event. At the surface, well, plenty cold enough in the mid levels, down to the surface, obviously all the way down to the surface. Point being is so cold all the way through here in the mid levels of the atmosphere. Our dendritic growth zone was a little bit higher on the last one, and we're even colder now. And with such a cold dendritic growth zone and well saturated, we have the forcing, as you can see here, on these bands. And this is pretty well inland too, remember. So we're going to be able to get bands that are going to be able to push pretty far inland as well. I mean, almost to the Finger Lakes here. Take a look. That's not great sounding. That's just a light snow sounding. That's a little bit. That's a little bit better. That's a good moderate snow sounding right there. Pretty well inland. So, and right off Lake Ontario too. This is Christmas morning, early Christmas morning. Not perfect, but decent. Another decent sounding. Still, is this going to be the same sounding? A little bit, not bad. Similar. Not perfect, but still a good moderate heavy snow sounding. And this is 2-3 days out, and so hopefully this doesn't seem too tedious for me. This is my curiosity right here, finding all these different locations and just different grafting. I didn't know there's more graftenites on here. Awesome. Way to represent. Way to represent. But see, it will be difficult a little bit to tell what is actual snow from the event and then what's lake effect. Um, It's almost lake enhanced from the system. Yeah, that's really good. This is just southeast of Buffalo. I mean, that's ridiculously cold. Almost too cold. Too cold for heavy snow. I'll be curious. I wonder if it's so cold that potentially it's messing with the soundings. Hmm. I'm curious. Because anytime we pulled these really cold soundings, like almost too cold, it's been difficult. But then we pull this one right here, a little bit warmer, right? Get to 12 degrees, well saturated, really good. I mean, -6 omega is ridiculous. Really good forcing, really good lift in the atmosphere. Tender growth zone from like 825 to the surface. That's where some ridiculously heavy snowfall rates, like 4 to 6 inches plus per hour, probably in that kind of band when we're looking at it. Oh, do I get it? Am I going to get back end snow? I would love back end snow, man. I would love some back end snow. Uh, uh, I mean, we're pretty well saturated in low level. I mean, this is a little elevated also, but this is not exactly where I live, but some decent low level saturation. Just not a lot of lift. Some flurries. Burks. Not bad. Not bad. Probably no accumulating snow, but flakes. Even this, though, actually, here's the thing about this. This actually increases this increases the flash freeze threat because this is not a if our dew point is still there, if we're still this saturated in low levels of the atmosphere, that makes me a little bit more concerned about the flash freeze threat. To be honest, tomorrow, um, that makes me a little bit more concerned because it's going to be able to saturate the atmosphere a little bit more, and it's going to make it harder to dry up the moisture that gets left behind. So that does make me a little bit more concerned about the flash freeze threat. And also notice we're going to talk about this. I mean, it will not take a lot for an ocean effect band to ride up right in here. Well, it will not be hard. We're going to be and just offshore. I mean, it could be like a full on snowstorm. It's going to be a full on snowstorm in the Atlantic. I mean, just days and days of ocean effect snow, probably. A couple days of ocean effect snow. And I think that's why Nantucket, Cape Cod, Martha's Vineyard, they're all going to get it. They're all going to get a pretty good event of snow. I think. I think they could. I think we could have some places get like 3 to 5 inches. I'm starting to think that could be in the cards. And when I say some places, some very isolated locations, if not just offshore. At a minimum, I think going to 1 to 3 inches is a good bet. Um, Coding to 1 to 3 inches is a good bet at a minimum for these locations, potentially, and with the potential for 2 5. Um, Again, we'll see. It's still a little. We'll have to. It's hard to pin down exactly where banding sets up, but I mean, just days and days and days. I mean, this is still left over at this point, there's left. It's just relying on the dynamics and the low level wind in place at this point. But still some low level vorticity that's left over. 850s. Still some left over. Couple bands left over. Just days and days out, and won't be the same Arctic air in place either. So it could work to the benefit to the point where it's not going to just dry up everything. Let's see. Yep, that's a really good sounding. Look at this. -20. -10 almost, just right above the surface. Really good sounding for moderate to heavy snow right there. And this is multiple days out, so it's just going to keep stacking up. I'll be curious. One of the key parts of the event now I'm starting to realize as I dig in here is tomorrow night. I mean, so we're pulling in some really cold Arctic air. I mean, think about it. Cold air, and just it may be too cold, and it may prevent saturation of the atmosphere. Right, like it wants to, but it's just so cold. I mean, at 3 degrees, it's hard to heavily snow at 3 degrees. It's difficult. You need a lot of factors to play a part. If the lake temperatures were warmer, if the lake temperatures were they're still warm, they're plenty warm. But like if they were even warmer, then I mean then you'd be able to get even more out of this. But I mean, some of the snow maps are just going off ridiculously. I mean, almost still snowing on Lake Ontario at that point, and yeah, and I think part of the problem I do have though with the Kachera is we take a look at the 6-hour intervals, and we just saw the soundings that we took from last night. Or for when I say not last night, but tomorrow night, take a look at some of the soundings. It has 8 inches of snow stacking up in that 6-hour interval where we just saw, not a lot of great atmospheric profiles for heavy snow. The music. We'll switch to jazz now after it adds me. Stay with me, I promise. I'm not leaving you guys. Not just yet. Not just yet. See, that will get the job done. 12 degrees. I think we pulled that sounding already. This closer to the coast. Closer to the coast will probably be that. I think that's closer to the coast. Tomorrow night will be. We'll be able to get in. We'll be able to get in onto. Even despite the colder temperatures, it won't be cold enough. Looks like they're still going to pull onto a little bit of that lake breeze to help prevent temperatures from going to like near zero. With those like low single digit temperatures, you're not going to be able to saturate the atmosphere enough. Just going to be too cold. And then that intrigues me. Yeah. Not perfect. But it's curious. Flakes. It's flakes though. Anything? Yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad actually. So cold though. I mean, 7 degrees. Yeesh. I mean, people can't be relying on that back end snow tomorrow. Here it is. Here's a Lake Ontario. Yeah, that's not as great as I thought it would be. And then tomorrow night and Christmas Eve morning, I think this is the day right here. I think well yeah, it said tomorrow night and then Christmas Eve itself as well. I think that is going to be a heck of an event. I think that so the peak time frame for this is tomorrow. So 23rd, 24th, 25th, I think are the probably your biggest days. But even the 26th, it could still be snowing. So won't quite be over. I mean, look at that. Lake Ontario thumping, just thumping away. Seems like southern Buffalo, south of Buffalo will pull in. Um, Seems like models are hinting in on these bands pushing south of Buffalo on Christmas Day, or I should say, Christmas Eve, late Christmas Eve. Hmm. This could play a factor. Could play a factor. We'll see. We'll see. No, it's interesting. Reflectivity just is not matching the soundings. It's pretty well saturated, honestly. Not quite down to the surface, though. Yep. That lake here, I forget the lake names. Is that Huron or no, I don't know. Forget that name of the lake, but it is what it is. All right, I think we covered what, or actually no, ocean effect. Ocean effect. I know. I promised myself I would cover this. Um, People do rewatch these, and I will specify when I talk about it. Um, so right, we still have more energy to come through, and that is going to come through indeed. So notice, right, we have more, right, and this is the TPV coming in. This is our polar vortex air, or no, our energy from the polar vortex coming in, and that's going to help combine that with our low level wind, or low level jet kicking in. Right, notice that's going to right still over inland, but also gets left behind too. Um, Combined with it being enhanced from the Arctic. I don't want to say we're past the front at this point. From the Arctic injection, and there'll be a couple days where we can rot out some snow across southeastern New England. Again, I kind of briefly covered it, but cold into two, 1 to 3. With I think there's a ceiling. There's like a 2 to 5, 3 to 6 ceiling here for some people. Um, I just mean persistent southwest breeze, or persistent breeze out of the southwest. That's going to be able to push. It's going to be able to push bands Punch it over Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, Cape Cod, southeastern Long Island, and then even out of the Sound. So this is where you can be able to get some bands over Rhode Island and southeastern Mass. You're going to be able to potentially produce some snow bands in there, and then you can see it'll kind of take a couple soundings. Um, can't take soundings on the 12K, of course you can't. It looks like light, but there will be some acute. Ooh, intriguing. Pretty good, some pretty good forcing at the low levels of the atmosphere. You can see not well saturated at the top of our dendritic growth zone, but we get to the bottom of our dendritic growth zone, we're actually pretty well saturated. So you could actually get some decent accumulation out of this. Not bad, not bad. That band's actually kind of intriguing. Not gonna lie. Why does it keep doing this to me? And then Nantucket. Right here's the first batch in Nantucket. Looks like a little band. I mean, it's kind of all over the place. The dendritic growth zone's not that shallow, or is it? I mean, yeah, this is deceiving with the dendritic growth zone because we're kind of -10 all the way down here, and we have some low level saturation. So this is probably some, moderate snow potentially falling. Not exactly accumulating great, but not the worst ever either. I'm curious if that band, man, if Long Island were here, take Long Island out of the equation, we could get a nice big old band over Nantucket. But right, ocean effect for days, and then Nantucket, southeastern Mass, they're going to have opportunities. Again, decent low level saturation, um, down to -10. I mean, our dendritic growth zone it's decently big. It's about 625, all the way down to 925. So be pretty cold. So we'll get some. It will be fluffy. So we'll be able to. It's not going to be a really wet snow. So it'll be able to accumulate okay across the Cape and Islands. And I think, yeah, yep. This will do it. This will do it. Take a look here. Right, not well saturated in the mid to lower levels of the atmosphere, the upper lower levels of the atmosphere, and into the mid levels of the atmosphere. But notice down here, right, dropping down almost 950, 925 here, just like our last sounding, well saturated from about 850 down. We have some pretty good forcing to here in the lower levels of the DGZ or dendritic growth zone, and that is going to help us accumulate some snowfall. So, I mean, we can take a look at some of these. Forget about the lake effect for a second. I mean, you can see NAM trying to suggest a few inches over Nantucket, and I definitely think that's possible. That is possible. So RGM's got a full-on snowstorm in the Atlantic. So let's take a look at the RGM. Will I get soundings from the RGM? No, I will not. So we're going to have to request it from here. Yeah, not great. Not that sounding. 43 Cape, though. Thunder snow, maybe? Nantucket. I guess theoretically Nantucket could be in play for thunder snow. So blotchy. Yeah, 36 Cape, son of a gun. Not super well saturated and not a ton of lift. Um, though, so some of these are kind of deceiving. It's hard to tell exactly. It's so blotchy though. For some, I don't know why. Super blotchy. Still not great, but 51 Cape. RGM saying doesn't have the lick. I mean, with you'd think you'd have more, little bit more forcing with 60 Cape. You'd think you'd have a little bit more forcing. So I guess we can't rule out thunder snow on Nantucket. Hmm, interesting. This is going on the Twitter. Little live tweet for the few people that are in here on YouTube and Twitter right now. What do you know? Should have been looking. I should have been looking into thunder snow. Now here, thunder snow. Yeah, that's not great sounding actually. We'll see. We'll see. Thunder snow is possible. Definitely possible. I mean, I just want to look at that for my own. Oh, Lord. Yep. That'll get it done. Curious. So there's got to be some better soundings here. More, at least a little bit more saturated. Nothing. I mean, hey, it's possible you get if we get. I mean, just day. I mean, think about it. Multiple days too, right? So maybe like typically snowstorms. If you're stuck in light to moderate snow, you're typically not going to be able to come out with a lot of snow if you just get stuck during a snowstorm. But you got to remember with ocean effect here, this is going to be a couple of days of persistent snowfall, or maybe a little on and off and on again. But for the most part, like a long duration snow event. So if you're just in light to moderate snowfall for like 36 out of 30, like let's say like 32 out of 48 hours, and you're snowing at a tenth to a quarter inch per hour, let's say on you get 0.2 inches per 32 hours. I mean, right there, you're going to stack up what, like 5 6 inches of snow, so that you can that's how you accumulate it. So again, a light, it's never gonna be probably. There could be a few heavy periods of snow potentially, but for the most part it's going to be a light to moderate snow. um, but it's going to be around for a little while, and it's going to be able to accumulate. I think that part of it can't be underestimated. Right? Because I mean, none of these soundings are really all that impressive on the RGM, and so they were okay, and they were better on the NAM. Um, None of these soundings are super impressive. again, and I'm not sure if the RGM is giving us its best impact. Now, this is this snow squall line right here. Snow squalls will be possible. I will say too. That's like snow squalls will be possible after the front moves through. With we have just this our Arctic polar vortex, right? Our polar vortex, right? It's swinging through. It's coming down from the backside of the system and swinging through, right? The vorticity has. So there could be some snow squalls possible um, across the Northeast as well. But not. It doesn't look like one clear massive snow squall line is getting ready to set up or something. That doesn't look like it. Not super. I'm a little less impressed. Not as well saturated tomorrow night. But it's gonna be around for days and days. That's how you're gonna be able to stack up so much snow. Um, I mean that's a decent sound. That's a pretty decent sound right there. That'll get the job done for moderate heavy snow off Lake Ontario. So just days and days and days of heavy snowfall. So I will say some of these Kachera numbers could be a little messed up. I will say, right, it's the soundings are taken are not. It's just what the model's depicting. So if the model's depicting it wrong, then that could be a problem. So here's one thing. Um, I didn't dive into specifics until tonight. This was the most I dove in terms of. You saw how many soundings we pulled. We pulled maybe 100 soundings tonight. Maybe not that, but like 50 soundings tonight. And one thing I'm not sure if I agree completely with is that do the soundings match the setup itself? Really strong low level winds, right? Pumping off pumping off the lake. I know we're gonna have Arctic air in place. I know it's gonna get really, like, when I mean Arctic, I mean like the Arctic air enough that people argue too cold to snow. But I mean, we have endless loads of vorticity to come through too. You got to remember that. So maybe, this might be the best time frame too, though. It may not be tomorrow night, and this may match up. And remember, the soundings we pulled that weren't necessarily great were just for when it was at its coldest and when it was the least amount of the best dynamics coming through across the upper mid, all this upper mid-level vorticity that needs to move through. Notice the least amount we have. Is that time frame where we're not getting maybe the best dynamics possible. The wind off the shore will try to do its best, but I mean, this may be the time frame. Christmas Eve morning. Christmas Eve morning. Through Christmas Day may be the best time frame, potentially. That may be the best time frame for the most snow. I did this time period though, so maybe 3 time periods where we max out right the backside, and then right after, right as the winds switch. I think there'll be an opportunity for some heavy snow tomorrow night. But I think the biggest, the period for the most accumulation, looking now, I think will be early morning, Christmas Eve through Christmas Day. I think that's the best time frame for the most snow. Although I think it will be windiest tomorrow and tomorrow night. So the blizzard conditions may not be maxed out to the fullest potential, but it will be pretty hectic. It will be pretty hectic. So stay safe for people that are getting impacted by this. We talked about pretty much almost every little detail in the storm when it comes to. We even talked about even to the Midwest. We talked about a little bit tonight, which is a little bit out of my usual talk about zones, but it's a big system. It's a big system, baby. We talked about pretty much every Northeast aspect we could. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how much more we could have covered. I wasn't gonna pull a sound in from every single location, but we pulled a lot. So I'll quote this and put some context so people don't have to watch the full hour and a half. But I appreciate everyone that came through. We will maybe stream tomorrow night. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I don't know. Depends on if I want to. We'll see. But I want to do this one. This lake effect event is really exciting. I think some people can end up with 4, 5, 6 plus feet of snow easily. And it wouldn't shock me if we saw some people come out with 7 to 9 feet of snow too. Just the setup itself is going to be ridiculous. I think it's a ridiculously good setup. It's 3-4 days of a really good lake effect snow setup. So yeah, appreciate everyone that came in. We will call it a stream. Thank you again to the YouTube folks, the ones that like and subscribe to the content. I really appreciate it. It's not necessary, but I do appreciate it. For the folks that come in on YouTube, and you just find it and you stay and you like and subscribe. I mean, Twitter folks are just here in and out for the information. They follow me. It's just what they want. But appreciate those YouTube folks as well. All right. Have a good night, everybody.